Good morning, Nigeria, and happy Saturday. Welcome to Breakfast Extra. Let me start with a question as always this morning. At what point does obedience become danger? Because decades ago, a man named Fela Anikulapo-Kuti asked the same question, not quietly, but loudly in a song, nearly 50 years ago. A song about soldiers and security forces who follow orders without thinking, without questioning, without conscience. He called them zombies. Now I'm not going to sing it for you this morning. You know the one. But I will remind you of what happened after. They came for him, raided his commune, burnt it to the ground, and threw his elderly mother, a woman in her 70s, from a window. She later died from those injuries, all because one man pointed at power and said something is deeply wrong here. And 50 years later, two stories, same song. Let's start with Mena Ogidi. His full name was Ogede Mena Ogidi, 28 years old, from Effurun, Delta State, an aspiring musician with his whole life ahead of him. On April 26, last Sunday, he went to the Benin Motor Park along the Warri-Sapele Expressway to pick up a parcel sent by an acquaintance. Transport workers became suspicious and asked him to open it. Inside was a Beretta pistol with 4 rounds of ammunition. Now, Mena told them he didn't know what was inside. He offered to take them to the person who sent it. The workers did what we expect citizens to do. They held him there and called the police. At this point, what should happen next is textbook. Police arrive, suspect is taken in, he is questioned, he cooperates. The sender is investigated, due process, rule of law. That is the job. Instead, ASP Nuhu Usman arrived at that scene. And according to eyewitnesses and the police own findings upon seeing the firearm, he got angry, loaded his weapon, and shot Mena Ogidi. There is a video. Many of you have seen it in that footage. Mena is seated on the ground in front of a marked police vehicle. He's not armed, he's not fighting, he's not running. He posed to no threat, and he was shot anyway. Even the Nigerian police force, in its own official statement, described what happened as a violation of Force Order 237 and Standard Operating Procedure. Their words. The Delta State Police Command called it an extrajudicial killing. The state governor called it unwarranted, unprovoked, and barbaric. The officer has been dismissed and is to face criminal prosecution. And yes, that is the correct first step. But let's be honest, this morning, dismissal is the floor, not the ceiling. Justice for Mena Ogidi means a conviction in open court on the record. So the next officer thinks twice. Because here is what makes this story even harder to carry. Mena's mother stood before a camera and said, "My 2 children were killed by the police. They first took my son in 2022, and now they have taken another one from me." This is a woman who has buried 2 sons, both at the hands of security forces. And she's asking, what did I do to the police? I don't have an answer for her. I wish I did. Now, the second story. And this one should make every single person in media sit up a little straighter. Justice Mark Chidebere, content creator, social commentator, known online as Justice Crack, a man who used his voice the way any citizen in a democracy is supposed to in the days leading up to his disappearance. He posted videos about the welfare of Nigerian soldiers, not insults, not rebellion. He asked questions about the food soldiers eat, about the conditions they endure, about the gap between those on the front lines and those in command. He also questioned the official account surrounding the death of young NYSC member Abdul Samad Jamil, shot dead in Abuja. The military attributed it to a stray bullet during an anti-robbery operation, allegedly. Justice Crack was not convinced, and he said so publicly. On April 28, he received a phone call He told his wife he was going to a meeting. He arranged for someone else to pick up his children from school. And since then, he has not been seen. His phones are off. His family is waiting. The country is asking questions. His last known location was the Nigerian Army Officers' Wives Association shopping complex in Asokoro, Abuja. No security agency has confirmed custody, just silence. The Rule of Law and Accountability Advocacy Center has said his disappearance followed patterns associated with unlawful detention, and they ended their statement with 5 words that should stay with all of us. Nothing must happen to him. So here we are, Nigeria. A young man, unarmed, seated in custody, shot dead in broad daylight by those sworn to uphold the law. Another man who spoke up, gone. No answers, no clarity, just silence. And a 50-year-old song that still sounds like today's headlines. So let me ask you again, at what point does obedience become danger? Who protects us from those meant to protect us? Did we ever answer that question? Because this is not just about 2 individuals. It is about a pattern where force is used, but not always justified, where voices rise and sometimes disappear. And in the middle of it all, in the Nigerian citizen, watching, recording, hoping, because we are not zombies. We're citizens, and citizens must never be afraid to think. Good morning. I am Queen Celestine, and this is Breakfast Extra, and of course with Mazino Appeal. Mazino, good morning.
I'm about to break into song, and I bet you know what song that might be. I will only sing it if you sing it along with me. Will you? Zombie?
Zombie, zombie.
I can't sing. That was a threat I should never have made. Good morning and welcome. Thank you very much, Queen. You know, the funny thing about the Nigerian police is the way it was instituted from back in the day. It was instituted to enforce order. It wasn't a partnership between citizens and a law agency, or rather a law and order agency. So that's the problem we're still seeing today, where we are being bossed around and poked at and pointed at and asked to park. Until that changes, I think we'll not see a police uniform and feel comfort. We'll see a police uniform and check our pulses. My take.
Well, let me call over and we start the show.
Yes, indeed.
Good morning.
Well, good morning and welcome again on Breakfast Extra. Today we begin in Effurun, just as Queen has just told, Delta State, where grief has spilled into the streets. Now, residents are protesting an alleged extrajudicial killing, and the Inspector General of Police says justice will be served. But as always, the question is not what is said, but what is going to be done. And then a moment to recognize excellence today. Kayode Akintemi, Managing Director and Editor-in-Chief of News Central TV, has been named among the 100 most reputable Africans in 2026. So we're going to take a closer look at the man, the work, and the quiet consistency that has built that reputation over time. From there, we move into politics, where the courts have once again stepped into party affairs. Now, the Supreme Court has dismissed the Turaki-led appeal in the PDP power struggle. Now, what does this mean for the party's future and for Nigeria's opposition politics as a whole? We'll get to talk about that here today, so stay with us. And also stay with us as we're going to be staying with the courts a little longer, this time with the ADC. The Supreme Court has restored the David Mark executive, effectively ending a leadership dispute. But as we have seen before, legal resolutions don't mean political peace. There's always still infighting and maybe even sabotage. We'll talk about that. And of course, we're going to turn to economics and your pocket. The central bank is tightening BVN regulations in a bid to tackle fraud. It sounds technical, but it also affects how we bank, how we transact, and how we secure our monies. It's really very, very technical, but we break it down here, simple, clear, and also we ask the hard questions about access and privacy. And finally, we slow things down for a conversation that touches nearly everyone. Working in Nigeria today, how hard is it for you? Survival, struggle, and the search for dignity. As workers marked another May Day yesterday, we ask what has changed from since before. Is it a conversation about law? Well, we'll get to find out. It's a full morning packed with stories this morning. Thank you very much for joining us for the conversations that are yet to start, but do stay. We'll talk about that and plenty more. Welcome once again, Queen. Great one. The police monologue there. You know, anything police, we shift to you.
Why?
Barrack girl. Yeah, do all the policing and
You know what
stuff.
I tell people? Oh, I was born in the barrack and I was there for a bit. They're like,
You don't look it.
you don't look it.
You don't.
How do people look from barracks?
Let me describe somebody here that looks like. I'm not going to do that. But no, you don't. So I understand why it's emotional for you or why it's close to your heart.
Yes.
Because you've lived the life on both sides.
Yes.
You've lived life as the daughter of a police officer, and then as a person who might have been repressed by the police itself. So I wonder how you manage it psychologically when you see the police on the road doing what allegedly people believe that the police is known for in Nigeria.
Well, you know, first thing first, I think I have to thank my dad for always reminding us what police are supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do. I think growing up back then, my father would say, police don't have any right to stop you except your car was marked for something.
Exactly.
So sometimes if they stop me, I say, are you looking for a particular car that I'm in, you know? He made sure we didn't wear the camouflage uniform. I got to understand the difference between the police black material and then, because there was a time they had to raid a market because there were tailors sewing
the black
police
material?
Yeah, it's
There's
different.
A special one?
There's a special one for
Really?
police, yes. So seeing these things
It doesn't
happen,
fade. So anyone that fades is not the real.
not necessary. There's a way the fabric looks. I can't. It's like charcoal or something. But please don't make me go into fashion in police.
It's more about
But-
the Nigerian police, please.
Yeah, but you know, seeing them act out of character, it now backs the fact where people are like, that's why they don't care about you. We're already trying to focus and win a case where you're talking about your welfare, we're talking about your
Yeah,
pension,
and then this
and
happens.
then this is happening, and then we're wondering, how do you guys just get trigger happy at every point in time? And so how do you fight for people who are not trying to fight for themselves?
You see, a couple of weeks ago, before you joined Breakfast Extra, I was having this conversation.
That's like a year ago.
Oh, but I had this conversation, I think, with Judith before, where we talked about how the police was, like I said from before, formed and why we see them the way that we do. I think at the time we're talking about the decentralization of the Nigerian police, and I had said, I think we had a guest, if I'm not mistaken, I had said to the guest that I don't think this would work unless you absolutely start from the bottom up, start all over again, because there's so much conditioning that the police is going through right now, whether it's the history behind them, their welfare, the way they are housed, or the conditions with which their living conditions and all of that. There's so much to look at. And then at the core of it is also the orientation. And until that orientation changes on both sides, whether the people or the police, you will not have a good relationship between the two.
Yeah.
So unless that happens, I think the conversation about decentralizing it and making state police, I think it was a bit premature. I know people are going to be like, oh, how could you say that? But I say, fact, if you haven't taken care of the basics, you can't just jump. You're making big decisions on very flimsy foundations.
Yes.
And I don't think that that's going to help the Nigerian police. We're still going to be seeing, I hope not, but it's fair to think that we might be finding things like this still happening inside of our environments. We hope not. We hope that these things settle down, but then again, there is a statement to be made. And I think, well, I said to somebody the other day, I'm scared of another NSAS. But we're seeing so many of these things come on a daily now on the internet. But let's do the dailies now. Let's tell you what the front pages have for us. So let's get it. Help me out, Queen.
Don't worry. I think maybe the next time you're riding, you're probably going to go to Europe. Let's just, he's excited with his riding. Let's start with the Saturday Times, shall we?
Yes, for the dailies. Independence. Let's do the Independence, shall we?
Okay, let's do the Independence.
Saturday Independence. Do you want me to go?
Yes, you go.
Grand. Saturday Independence this morning has this front headline here: 2027 election, high cost of nomination forms, limited access for credible leaders to governance, says the report. But of course, the young people can't afford it, so how do you expect them to even bid? With such nomination form prices, you can only bet to see people who are already in offices and can solicit for funds, go into these offices. At the top, Oyo 2027, APC leader endorses Ali as governorship candidate. Faction group rejects Unity Forum endorsement. And the big story, David Mark's lawyer hails INEC for restoring ADC leadership. congratulations to him and the people loyal to him under that party. Wike-backed PDP spits fire, wants Turaki Group to stop distorting Supreme Court judgment. It's the Supreme Court. They make a judgment. I doubt that it will be distorted by any individual or individual group's preference. And this is the problem here with Nigeria. When the Supreme Court says something, there's always that under-wala where people or the parties involved will start chatting and, you know, distorting the truth. Amid rising extrajudicial killing, IGP Disu moves to crack down on errant officers and Labour to engage FG in fresh minimum wage negotiations in 2026. July, says Ajero, congratulations. I guess that means we're getting a raise too. So we have to start talking to the to HR here now, shall we?
Go away. Let's move to The Guardian, shall we?
Yes, let's.
Right at the center, schools demolition stains Lagos. Huh? Schools demolition stains Lagos Project Zero. So confusing.
Project Zero, it's a project. Apparently it's not looking good for it.
I can see.
Yeah.
Workers' Day. Tinubu label tango on reform gains policy direction. NDLA dismantles Abuja drug bunks, arrest 132. I always like to hear these things, but we have to see them. How do we know where they are? Recovers 220 kilogram illicit substances. Federal government earmarks 250 billion naira to construct student hostels in tertiary institutions. Your demolition school here, you're constructing hostels there. Right at the top, before birth, the battle for a lifetime begins.
I wonder what that's about. But that's on page
2027. Abiodun Daniel lock horns over Ogun East APC senatorial ticket.
As 2027 comes closer, everything is heating up now again.
It is
it's just months away. Going to be very exciting, this election. Let's do the weekend trust, shall we? I'll take that one. APC consensus in crisis. APC consensus once again over and over. What?
I'm doing the
You're doing
strip
the
in front of the.
Oh, is that what he's? Oh, I get it. You should see what Queen was doing in the studio. It's like that Gen Z. What's it called?
Leave me alone.
Gesture. High cost pushes potato, meat, eggs off dining tables. I have not taken note, but I do know that the average meal is now costing more, or is shrinking if you're still paying the same price. At the top for the weekend trust, Abuja communities where residents pay to sleep. I'm interested in that. And terrorists kill nurse, 4 farmers in Niger State, 61 years after Operation Witie. On page 27, and that will, why Almajiranchi persists. A story on page 10 that I will be taking a personal look at after today's edition for Breakfast Extra.
Yes, you will.
Because I'm very concerned about the state of northern children. I love northern children. They're always so...
I love them too.
It's the word
I
hospitable.
stayed in Jos for a year and they're super amazing.
So nice.
And the food there is so good. But anyway, let's do this day next, shall we? Opposition, Labour demand action as Tinubu declares hardship, insecurity and emergency. Atiku Obi knocks government, NLC, TUC set agenda ahead of 2027. States roll out support schemes amid mounting economic pressure. NHRC warns workers at breaking point as fuel and living costs surge. And right at the top, 2027, Fubaras loyalist Dear Wike pick re-election form for governor. Women's group endorses governor Tinubu's re-election. Unveiling Oyo APC consensus governorship candidates. Really, elections is coming. That is Mazino's favorite time of the season. Forbearance burden, 9 banks, 3.24 trillion naira exposure wipes out shareholders' dividends. Interesting. I think that's literally all. Mazino, why are you laughing?
I mean, you're sitting at home thinking that, oh, don't worry, my money's making money.
No, and right there it says ADC vows to sue INEC and Mopito for de-recognizing David Mack's leadership. Can we just move?
So it gets very confusing, the different rulings that come out and then the pushback from the parties. Even as a journalist, it's very confusing to keep up with the trend that's happening inside of the different parties. Who exactly is the chairman today? In the next 1 hour, another person has come to say, no, he's not the chairman. Personally, I get confused. I will not lie. So every single morning,
Yeah, you're trying to understand what does this mean.
Who's the chair?
And you know, if we keep having these internal fights between the leaders that are supposed to lead us,
not even
at
the
what point are
opposition that's supposed to give you a fair chance?
So at what point
choices.
do we get to the citizens actually and the matters at hand?
So interesting question. I don't think they're thinking about you. And that's my problem with Nigerian politics. It's always top heavy.
You said it
from the grassroots.
You said it.
Think about it. Every single time I'm always concerned about the grassroots. They're not in the picture. The nation is up next. Let's do that. Tinubu declares national emergency. Hang on a second. Didn't you just do? Oh, this is a different iteration from the nation. Tinubu declares national emergencies on security and food. Says threats undermines jobs and productivity. Akpabio hails workers' resilience and patriotism. That's on May Day, I guess. At the top, Supreme Court judgment. PDP dismisses Awabara's claim to party leadership. And 11th Assembly, APC governors, national leaders meet over primaries. At the bottom here, Oyo 2027, APC leaders endorses Ali as governorship candidate and president to visit France, Kenya, Rwanda for strategic summit. You go. I love your itinerary. And my son was never violent, says mother of Delta youth shot dead by the police. There is also a query regarding that instance about the police shooting in Delta State. That 3 officers standing, the one who shot was an officer, but the other 2 were not, is a claim that's being made. So then there's talks or rumors about where Ogidi body is.
Right.
And it's such a and then the story even gets more complicated with the conspiracy that we're not being presented the right guy.
Yes.
Because of the video versus the pictures that have been brought up by the Nigerian police as the alleged killer. He's got a beard, while the person in the video doesn't. So much to consider.
So much to consider. Let's not talk about that, because there are so many things I have seen. I'm like, you know what? Let's just check the Saturday Tribune, shall we?
Go ahead.
Insecurity. U.S. threatens to withhold 50% aid to Nigeria. You find that on page 3. And kidnappers asked our boss to choose who to kill among us if only 20 million naira ransom.
You have to read that out. We can't hear. What's? Say again.
God. Kidnappers asked our boss to choose who to kill among us if only 20 million naira ransom was paid.
That's traumatic.
It is traumatic. Not even the family, the boss. Okay, choose your favorite employee.
Oh, God.
Gosh. Plateau police arrest 9 over fresh attack plot. Find out on page 3. Will resist any attempt to return Oyo to dark days after Makinde, says pensioners. I will defeat insecurity and poverty, says Tinubu in page 3. We're ready to take in politicians from ADC and PDP. Baba Ahmed, that's PRP national chairman, says Tinubu's government must go in 2027. And right at the top, after divorce, she became a tenant in my house. Ex-husband tells Ibadan court. I contributed over 3 million.
Sorry, go back. Go back. You can't just read down and go. What exactly did you say? She became a tenant.
After divorce, she became a tenant in my house. Ex-husband says, tells Ibadan court. I contributed over 3 million naira to build the house. It belongs to both of us, says the woman. I think I would just leave this for take 3, because some things that make it to the front page.
Well, that's an interesting dynamic there. If she contributed to building the house, then doesn't she have a right to it? She can't just up and leave.
I'll tell you a story.
What's she going to do?
There were 2 friends that I met a few years ago. They had rented an apartment together. So one had said, one has said, you know what, I would, do the painting and everything. One said, I'll buy the furniture. So anyway, either way, one bought cutleries, chair, the fridge and stuff. One painted, the tiles when they fought.
I'll take my paint.
Yeah. I was there, I would take my fridge and stuff. I'm like, why will you take his head? You painted, scrape the wall.
I thought that would be the argument. Interesting. Okay.
Oh my God.
Do we move to the next daily now?
Let's do that.
Saturday Telegraph has these headlines here. Jero Osifo Obi Mark and Esele. What government must do to mitigate workers' plight? We want living wage, 100% salary adjustment from July. If we secure national decisive If we secure nation decisively, investment will follow naturally. Without justice for workers, no justice for nation. Tinubu, insecurity, poverty, threats to jobs, national stability. At the top for the Saturday Telegraph, General Victor Malu's son, General Ibrahim, punished my dad for refusing to make broadcasts supporting IBB's coup. All the stories from IBB era, you should read about it. Very interesting. It's the stuff Nigerian movies should be made of. Catholic bishop laments rising insecurity and poverty in others. And at the bottom for the Daily, what am I having? The Daily Telegraph. ADC leadership, lawyers split over implications of Supreme Court's judgment. Now the lawyers are now split. Edem says it may serve as a moral and legal compass for FHC. Adabara says the judgment may not be binding on specific facts of the FHC case. Everybody splits. Tinubu embarks on trip to Kenya, Rwanda, and France, as said from before. And beware of opposition trying to truncate democracy, Kaduna Governor Sani warns. Fuel pump price now 1,400 naira. Congratulations, Nigeria.
I think we have one more.
One more.
Let's do
I think
the Saturday Vanguard.
The Vanguard.
Yeah.
And I would like to thank the producers for not letting me do the Vanguard. As from now, let's remember Mazino cannot handle the Vanguard.
Why is that?
It's too distracting. Go ahead there. Go, Queen.
I'm sending you to Harvard.
Go, Queen.
Mazino. Okay, Saturday Vanguard. I like the laugh. It's making us a bit calm after all the monologue and the drama in Nigeria.
Yeah, you need
Insecurity. U.S. to review aid to Nigeria. So help us God. Appropriations Committee recommends 50% funding cut. Maps out funds to tackle Fulani militia activity in M-Belt region. And right at the top of President Donald Trump's head, we have 2027 presidency, Obi Kwankwaso versus Atiku Makinde or Amechi on page
Very nice dynamics.
8.
Very nice dynamics.
Party still in trouble. Legal hurdles fester beyond Supreme Court's verdict. Right at the top, Enugu are Gil Naji, Chinyaka Oha in the Goba race for real. You find that on page 27. Mayday, insecurity, poverty, national emergencies threatening workers, says Tinubu. And right below the lady, Sonia Ogene on page 6, Two-Face, Baba, my greatest driving force, regret after 25 years on stage, says Baba. Opens up on his issues with blackface. And on top,
years.
Nigeria risks instability without credible opposition in 2027, says Peter Side. And Delta Daylight murder. What have I done to police? Killing my 2 sons, one after the other, says the grieving mother of Mene Ogidi. The inequality of zoning in Bauchi, a history of one-zone political supremacy. And why we must stop shielding children from the truth of absentee parents. I'm not sure exactly what Sonia Ogene did, but maybe Mazino will check. But that's it for the Saturday Vanguard.
Now, thank you very much. Those are your front pages, the dailies, what you should expect to see when you pick up a copy of any of the newspapers this morning. Let's get to conversation, shall we? Let's start with our big report in only just a bit. We'll be back.
Now let's go to our weekend warrior. In the media, reputation is rarely loud. It is built over time in decisions most people never see but always feel. Kayode Akinteme's recognition as one of the 100 most reputable Africans in 2026 reflects that kind of journey. It is not a moment, it is a body of work. From his earlier years in fast-paced newsrooms to senior editorial and management roles, Akinteme has moved through Nigeria's broker space with a clear and consistent philosophy. Clarity over clutter, context over noise, discipline over spectacle, In an industry often driven by speed, that posture has helped define his professional identity. Across major platforms, his contribution has gone beyond reporting. He has been part of shaping newsroom systems, guiding editorial direction, and developing talent. Those who have worked within those spaces often point to a leader who understands both the craft and the structure of journalism. Someone who knows that credibility is not built in headlines alone, but in the processes behind them. At News Central TV, that influence is clear. As managing director and editor-in-chief, he has overseen the growth of a network that is steadily carving out its place. The tone is measured. The reporting is deliberate. There is a visible commitment to telling African stories with context and balance. In a media environment where information moves fast and attention is fragmented, that approach requires restraint. It also requires consistency, and that is where reputation truly lives. Not just in what is published, but in what is chosen, in the ability to hold the line when pressure builds, in the quiet insistence that standards matter, even when they are inconvenient. Akintemi's leadership reflects an understanding of a changing media landscape. Platforms are evolving, audiences are shifting, but the core responsibility remains to inform, to contextualize, to maintain trust. Under his watch, News Central has grown in reach and sharpened in voice. There is a stronger emphasis on depth, on clarity, and on storytelling that reflects the complexity of the continent it serves. To be named among the 100 most reputable Africans is at its core a recognition of consistency, of staying committed to a standard over time. In a space where credibility is consistently tested, that kind of steadiness stands out. Congratulations to Mr. Kayode Akintemi on this honor. And that was, of course, our MD. And yesterday was Workers' Day. So with that, we just met it to say Happy Workers' Day to everybody in News Central. And Congress once again to Kayode Akintemi. Now let's go on a short break. When we return, our first conversation starts. Stay with us.
And you're welcome. It's time now for our big report, actually. Now, in Effurun Delta State, grief has turned into protest. A young life lost, allegedly at the hands of law enforcement, has once again forced the familiar question into the open. When those meant to protect are accused of killing, what does justice really look like, and who is going to deliver that justice? Now, this is not an isolated story. It sits within a wider pattern of complaints around excessive force and accountability, especially recently. Now, with residents on the streets and the Inspector General of Police assuring justice, the gap between police and proof is back under scrutiny.
Our correspondent has been on the ground in Effurun speaking with eyewitnesses, family members, and community leaders. He has tracked the sequence of events, examined the official response, and tested it against what residents say actually happened. What emerges is a timeline still contested, a community still tense, and a demand that goes beyond statements to something more concrete. And here now is our special report by Austin Azu, News Central correspondent.
This is the amateur viral video where the 28-year-old Ogenemine Ogidi was shot to death by a police officer identified as ASP Nuhu Usman in Effurun, Delta State.
I don't know. Jesus.
Some eyewitnesses gave an account of what transpired.
Like we had to see what happened on Sunday. When they send the way because the boy. So now they come out and say what he did inside the parcel. And the boy goes, I don't know what he did inside the parcel. Like what we see is you. I don't know what he did inside the parcel. And they go and say, open what he did inside the parcel. The boys are not going to feel open now because I don't know. I said they send a call give me for all the way for Saple. Before we look, police just come. As police come, that police just surrender the boy. Open what he did the parcel. Open what he did the parcel. The boy say not going to feel open now. Before we look, now go for come outside for the parcel. Now they shoot the boy. As they shoot the boy, now they carry the boy. Go Egba. Now so now we take and finish.
Because I did the way it happened, where the boys carry the way there be two boys will enter the garage, two boys will enter the garage. So now one Now the boy now they kill and I can't see with the way before I can't suspect. What was the other guy we follow him? The other guy, my mind tell me maybe now the other guy we follow and I give the guy the way be so we go way be.
Human rights activists, aggrieved youth and family members of the deceased embarked on a peaceful protest in Warri. They registered their grievance at the Ekpan police station, Effurun, and Ekpan area command.
A full-grown man of 28 years just left the house and never came back. The next thing we saw was video of him being shot like an animal, like a rabbited dog that is about to be put down by people that are supposed to protect us.
Currently, we are here to intimate the world about the extrajudicial killing of my cousin, Ogidi.
We are looking forward for justice. I mean justice holistically.
These protesters have insisted that they will occupy the entrance of the Nigerian Police Force, Ekpan Police Division, from Delta State until their demands are met.
Police later attempted to disperse the protesters with tear gas, escalating already heightened tensions with bystanders scrabbling for safety. In a twist of events, youth suspected to be Ekpan community youth, brandishing dangerous weapons, chased the protesters away from the entrance of Ekpan police station. Meanwhile, the Inspector General of Police, represented by the AIG Zone 5, Garba Samandongo, accompanied by the Delta State Commissioner of Police, Yemi Oyenye, met some family members of the deceased at the Warri Area Command, where Senator representing Delta Central at the National Assembly, Ede Dafinone, also joined them to condole with the family of the late Ogidi.
So he has directed me to come and make sure that we do everything needful to assure the aggrieved party, that's the family of the bereaved person, to calm them and assure them that justice will be done.
Condolences go out to the family and friends of the deceased. It is a shocking shame that this could happen, but I have to say it could happen anywhere. It's a very unfortunate incident.
For many concerned Nigerians, the hope is that the assurances that justice will be served do not end up being mere words, but that justice gets served for Ogidi family to find closure. In Delta, for News Central, Austin, Azu.
And joining us is Effemina Umokoro, human rights activist, to take us through the details that has happened since the fatal shooting of Effemina. Efe, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, Effemina, this incident is traumatizing for everybody. A lot of people have seen this video. And of course, as we can see, it has sparked protest and renewed concern about extrajudicial killings. From a human rights standpoint, when a case like this emerges, what are the immediate legal standards that, should guide how authorities respond to this?
Firstly, I want to sincerely thank the Inspector General of Police in person of IGP Tunji Dasu. He has, if not for his proactive steps, the end brutality protest would have erupted the country the very day this issue happened. But the action of the IG, to an extent, brought calm, brought hope that justice will be served. The first step to take by the police was to arrest the said suspects and then order room trial, dismissal, and the last part is ensuring that he's being charged to court for murder. I think we are at the last stage of action presently.
Effemina, I'm wondering now, we saw videos there of the youth who have gone or taken to the street. These were from yesterday afternoon or yesterday evening. What's happened since then, since you are well in the know of what's happening regarding the protests that this has erupted into?
what led to that mini protest at the front of the police station was due to overbearing of some of the junior officers. While we were trying to calm the angry youth, the youth are already angry that one of their own has been extrajudicially killed. And it is expected that every right-thinking officer should build his shock observer. That is not the right time to reply the youth. But some overbearing officers were replying the youth were replying them. That was what now prompted the youth to say, it simply means you guys are lying. Usman is inside the station, we are going to get him. So it was that point they were trying to force themselves into the station. That was where the tear gas, the officers started using tear gas to dispatch the crowd. But after like 30 minutes, we were able to, leaders, myself, Harrison Wamushu, and other stakeholders there, we were able to calm the situation down. But while we were doing that, that was where you saw the video of the host community who came to say no, that they are going to do what they are going to do to protect their area. So the youth came out with machetes and all that to chase out angry protesters.
Okay, so the two things here now, Effemena. One, there are conspiracy talks about the body of Effemena. There's unclear detail about where it is.
No, it is clear. It is clear.
Where is his body?
Yes, the reason why the police did not take most persons to see the corpse is because if they try that, it will increase tension. Okay. The corpse is in a government hospital in Warri, a government mortuary rather in Warri. The corpse is very safe, and the state police command has asked the family to come up for autopsy. So the corpse is very, very safe.
And what about talks about the gun? Has the police gotten any leads into knowing who sent the gun in the first place in that package?
The truth is this. I always say it. I say the evil you fail to destroy today will come back to destroy you tomorrow. Usman Nuru is the evil the Delta State Police Command refused to destroy yesterday. Hence, it has come to hurt them now. Nuru knows what he's doing. What Nuru did was to kill the line of investigation from getting into the sender. Now, Nuru worked in Jesse previously. Jesse has a close proximity to Saple. If you watch that young man crying to say, I will take you to the place in Saple, I guess that was the main reason why Nuru quickly killed him. Because Nuru knows that his crime and criminality will be exposed since he has worked in that area and he tends to know too much in that area.
Now, Effemena, now that you've gone there, can you just give us some stories about this guy, Nuru? You said, yes.
No, okay, wait. Why Nuru was in GC, it was my complaint to the Commissioner of Police Delta that took him from GC where he did a similar gun issue. He arrested somebody with a cut-to-size gun. And then collected 2.5 million himself and his then DPO, one CSP, Shindi, one Bwezi, collected 2.5 million naira from the family to release the said suspect. Realizing that the said suspect has a lot of money, Nuru now went further to start to extort them. While the suspect was in cell for 7 days, the chief magistrate of Jesse Court came to the station and demanded to see the cell. On interruption with the cellmates, the magistrate demanded that Israel, who was arrested for that offense, to be released. When Nuru and his DPO realized that they've already collected 2.5 million naira, releasing the suspect by the magistrate will put them into trouble. They now told the magistrate that the case is for transfer to Asaba. That was where the family now came to say, you cannot transfer our brother to Asaba. Why we are giving you 2.5 million naira? You must bring our 2.5 million naira before you transfer our brother. That was the case I reported to the state command. And they told me that Nuru has been arrested. Unknowing to me that when I left their station, they transferred Nuru from Jesse and took him to a better area command, which is area command, Effurun. So that is why I continue to say that the Nigerian police aided Usman Nuru for this offense. So it's a systemic problem, not just an individual error. But if they are dealt with him decisive,
now, I hope we... Oh dear. We seem to be having some jam in the network.
This young man.
All right, Ifemena, I'm sure that you've concluded your entry there. But Ifemena, we want to keep you. We're still coming back to dig more into the instances here. Thank you for giving us the details regarding this other issue. We're going to come back. Let's take a short break. Please do stay with us. We'll be back. And you're welcome back. Just before we went on that break, we were speaking with Ifemena from Delta State, Effurun, human rights activist. And of course, we were talking about the extrajudicial killing by a Nigerian police alleged of Ogidi. Now, this has gone into so much, the dynamics have changed, as we see in our report from Austin Azu, the protests that sprang up. Ifemena has been, well, we had a bit of an issue where he is disconnected at the moment, but we will try to rejoin him, or he'll try to rejoin us so we can continue with the conversation. Very interesting dynamic he put to the tail here regarding the involvement of the same police officer in other issues that warranted him being, well, I don't know if that's a warrant, because, I mean, if that kind of a thing happens, shouldn't he be dismissed then? Now, look at this picture. Now, this is one concern that was raised. The fact that the pictures that are being paraded on social media and across media generally is of one with Nuhu in a beard. And then the picture or the video that shows him actually shooting Emena was one of him without a beard. One investigator had raised this issue. How come he is being paraded in handcuffs but with a beard? And from the video from last week Sunday, he didn't have a beard. Could he have grown a beard in just a couple of days, which is actually impossible? So I think there is credible fingers being pointed at the fact that he was responsible for some other crime from before.
Yes.
Otherwise, he wouldn't be in handcuffs, in a uniform.
Yes.
So, yeah, big question. Why exactly is he still inside of the police force?
Ifemena almost mentioned something that we should not miss. He said that Mena Ogidi has said, I will take you to Sapele. I don't know anything about the guns, but I can take you to who sent it or whatever, you know. And Ifemena mentioned something that Nuhu knows what he was doing and he was trying to shut Ifemena up.
Yeah, the line of investigation.
The question is, what is going on? Is it that Nuru is working for a syndicate or for something, or he knew what was happening, or he was using this guy to cover up a story or cover up investigation to die? We've seen situations where they will say, oh, we arrested them, and then you're like, oh, we didn't know they were not the ones. He looked like, he didn't look like, he looked like, it didn't look like. At what point do we how do we follow up these stories? I was asking our investigative journalist, Masha Anthony Onoye, yesterday, how do we follow up these situations? How do we know that these people are being brought to justice? They'll say, okay, they've gone to prison. Which prison? How do we follow up? I'll give you an instance of the Chidima incident a few years ago where she allegedly killed her lover in the hotel or whatever, and they said she was in prison. And a few years later, they said she won pageantry prison.
Well. No,
I'm just using that as an example. We don't know what happened to these people. How do you move?
So as an example, that we know that she's still in the prisons, yes?
So let's say that. But these other people, how do you move an officer with an issue from one place to another place?
No record,
and then he just moved somewhere else. So these things it makes it easy for citizens not to trust.
Distrust.
And it's exhausting.
So I really wish we could get Ife back on with us, because the one question I really wanted to ask was regarding the identity of the two other individuals inside of the video who seems to be assisting Nuru when he was trying to arrange or get ready that weapon, because there are talks that they might not be police officers themselves. His entire unit, however, seems to have been arrested, but the two individuals inside of that video are raising questions about their real identity. Who are they exactly? If we can get Ifemena back, that would be grand, but if not, well, hey, I guess we have covered as much of the conversation. So what we're going to do now is, hopefully, if we do get him back, we will be coming back on this conversation. But if we can't, well, we'll move on. I want to say thank you to Ifemena for joining us to give us the little that he could We'll continue to dig into the story here at News Central to be able to get to the bottom of it and follow through, especially with the police officer who is now in custody and will be tried. So do stay with us on that one. Across all our programs, we'll be letting you know. But for now, it's still Breakfast Extra. Do stay here. We'll be back. Welcome. It's still Breakfast Extra, but it's time for the headlines. My name is Mazino Appeal. Our President Bola Tinubu will depart Abuja on Saturday for a three-nation trip to France, Kenya and Rwanda, where he will attend major summits focused on investment, economic growth, climate action, and also strategic partnerships. The president's first stop will be France before heading to Nairobi, Kenya, for the Africa-France summit scheduled for May 11th to May 12th. The meeting, co-chaired by French President Emmanuel Macron and also Kenyan President William Ruto, will address energy transition, digital transformation, green industrialization, and climate action. Tinubu will then travel to Kigali, Rwanda for the Africa CEO Forum from May 14 to May 15, where business leaders and investors will discuss regional integration and Africa's economic transformation. Nigeria has assumed the chairmanship of the African Union Peace and Security Council for May 2026. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced the development in an official statement. Officials say Nigeria remains the only member state with continuous representation on the council since 2004 and last held the position in December 2022. The government states it will apply its institutional experience during the session. The agenda includes security challenges in West Africa and the Sahel, alongside plans for counter-terrorism strategy, maritime coordination, and the African Standby Force. Policy expert Jake joined us on the news earlier, that's yesterday, for his take on the subject. Let's take a look at it. Well, we'll bring you that subsequently. But away from that, a coalition of global and African stakeholders have convened at the Handshake Summit with a focus on translating policy commitments into measurable outcomes. The summit, organized by the Semaform Foundation in partnership with Concord App and Budget, brought together policymakers, technologists, and also development actors to address gaps in implementation. A key highlight was the launch of the Digital Audit Dashboard, an AI-powered platform designed to track real-time progress and sustainable development goals and access to the impact of partnership. And now, away from our shores, amid rising xenophobic attacks in South Africa, the Nigerian Consulate and the Nigerian Citizens Association in South Africa have arranged free repatriation flights for Nigerians willing to return home permanently. Many Nigerians have shut down their shops and businesses as violent anti-foreigner protests spread across cities including Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Durban. The unrest has led to harassment, looting, injuries, and growing fear among foreign nationals, forcing many to remain indoors for safety. Authorities also confirmed the deaths of 2 Nigerians in separate attacks, deepening concerns over the worsening security situation. Now to the Middle East. U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed dissatisfaction with Iran's latest proposal to end the conflict. He stated that the options remain either reaching an agreement or launching decisive strikes. The remarks followed reports that Tehran submitted a revised proposal through Pakistan as diplomatic efforts continue. Officials say discussions remain stalled despite a temporary ceasefire. And 6 people have been injured following a stabbing at Foss High School in Tacoma, Washington, after an altercation during school hours. Police say the victims include 5 students and a security guard, all now in stable condition. Authorities confirmed the suspect, also a student, was apprehended at the scene and is facing multiple counts of first-degree assault. Emergency services responded shortly after reports of an active attack in the afternoon. Investigators say the incident began as a dispute that escalated into violence, prompting a temporary lockdown and evacuation of the school. And that's all for the headlines now. Let's get back to Breakfast Extra. We'll be back.
Now let's move to a big story. The Supreme Court has dismissed the Turaki-led appeal in the ongoing PDP leadership dispute, bringing a layer of legal finality to a crisis that has lingered within the party. At face value, the ruling settles a question of legitimacy, but beneath that, it exposes the depth of internal fractures that continue to define the PDP's current reality. These matters beyond party lines. The PDP remains a major player in Nigeria's political landscape, and its internal stability has implications for opposition strength, democratic balance, and electoral competitiveness. A court ruling may resolve the legal question, but it does not automatically resolve political tensions.
So, to break this down, we're joined by Tunji Abdulhamid, lawyer and member of the PDP, and also Anthony Ehiabo, legal practitioner and member of the PDP as well. Gentlemen, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. It's good to have you here. I would like to first of all start by asking what the different stance might be between the two of you regarding the issue here. But I'd like to start with Mr. Anthony. If you'd state your ground on the matter regarding the dispute within the PDP, how far in it goes, whether there's one or not.
Yeah, so I think the matter within PDP is context and blasé reality. On one hand, you have one man who sits in his office, have people come there, have his allies, and says he has taken over the party, gets a secretary who was suspended to create a caretaker committee, get judges to give rulings or judgments that favor that committee, and says he has taken over the party. Now, I know that there is no issue with the Adolfo Swabara BOT. So naturally, that's an incontrovertible position. That is, there's no court case. There's no. He just declared that Mao Habunwa, his friend, is now the BOT chairman. That doesn't happen. This is a political party with people who have interest, people who have sacrificed a lot for the party. He's been a beneficiary of the party. Some of us have never benefited in any way from PDP. We just contribute because we feel it's a veritable vehicle for delivering a specific purpose of agenda or policies for Nigerians that will better their lives. And that's what we believe in. Now, I'll give you sort of like a legal context. And it was curious because I was just reading the appeal court judgment and I stumbled on the Justice of Court of Appeal on his ruling. In that ruling, it was actually Ajibade, who was the former National Legal Advisor, who was suspended with Bature, Onoha, and Ayamu. They were suspended by the NWC. And there was a letter towards their suspension. That letter was communicated. Now, the context which the judgment of the Court of Appeal gave was that Ajibade, as the former National Legal Advisor, now suspended, could not have entered into that appeal, which was concurrent at the time, and far after the caretaker committee was set up. So at that time, the court viewed him as a suspended member of the PDP and made a pronouncement in the judgment that favored the cancellation of the Turaki-led convention. So it was part and parcel of that judgment. Now, Ajibade cross-appealed that judgment in the appeal that the Turaki-led NWC went for at the Supreme Court. So when they had filed their brief, he filed a cross-appeal to say, please, remove this from the judgment of the appeal court. Because he knew the implications. If he didn't know the implication, he would have kept quiet, he wouldn't have filed a cross-appeal.
Okay.
Now, the Supreme Court gave judgment. And I cannot query that judgment because I particularly was wary when the court gave an order restraining the PDP from going on. And you must realize that the issue of the courts interfering in political party activities was also settled yesterday, because the court said, look, we will not interfere in political party affairs. But because one of our courts, a superior court of records, the Federal High Court, gave an order stopping you from doing something. And it is common knowledge that if a court, even if it's a magistrate court in Dawaki, he gives an order. Until you vacate that order is alive. That's why the pronouncement of judges and the jurisdictional community is so important. That is what they said.
Okay, then, Anthony.
The internal affairs of the party is not up for question. It's just that they violated the court rule. So,
all right, then, Anthony.
In essence, the Supreme Court said.
Anthony, I hope you can hear us. I've been trying to butt in there for a minute because I actually want Abdulhamid's contributions here as well to also create his own premise, just as you have done. So, Abdulhamid, I'm sure that you've listened to what Anthony has said. Do you have any differences from his entry?
Yeah, I respect Anthony's opinion. I respect his position, but that position is far from the truth. The facts are not correct. In fact, there is a misleading fact as far as I'm concerned. You cannot say, yes, the fact is that, look, there was a suspension in November 2025, or first, yes. There was a counter suspension as well. That suspension, even the letter that was transmitted to the INEC to talk about the suspension, they said they were suspended for 1 month. 1 month from November 1st to date. Is that from November 1st, 2025 to date? Is that 1 month? Has it not expired? They were suspended for 1 month. Clearly stated in the letter, paragraph 3 of that letter to INEC, that they have been suspended for 1 month for anti-party activities. And if you suspend somebody for 1 month, and let's even forget that, after the 1 month, their tenure expires sometimes in December, and they've left without any challenge of anybody in court to say, look, thereafter December 8th, they form committee, interim committee after the expiration of the current last NWC. They form a committee, NWC committee or whatever, interim committee. No one, as I speak today, as I sit here, nobody has challenged that interim committee in court. To even Capitol, the Federal High Court in Ibadan, affirmed the legality of that committee. That committee now prepared grants. They now went to conduct a convention in Abuja. As I speak here today, no one has challenged that convention to say it's illegal. So on what basis are they talking about a vacuum in the leadership? Where is it in that judgment of the Supreme Court where it was stated that in view of this, the convention of in Abuja or the leadership of Abramando is now hereby nullified? So
Abdulhamid, I hear what you're saying. Abdulhamid, so I hear what you're saying, but I want you to defend the legitimacy of the National Working Committee as you support it now. So I hear you pointing fingers, but what about your legitimacy or the legitimacy of the faction that you support? Can you give credible facts to why it is the legitimate one?
God for us, there's no faction now. Based on the Supreme Court decision, there is nothing like faction.
Okay.
The court is clearly stated. You see, the Turaki-led faction, group, filed an appeal. They filed an appeal, and the court said this appeal is hereby dismissed. Yet, we are talking about a faction. So the appeal has been dismissed. If you file an appeal and has been dismissed, does that mean you have won anything in court? Nothing in your favor. They are just trying to make themselves happy. There is nothing regarding legality of this particular NWC. I don't know if Anthony has read it. I've seen the notice of appeal filed by this Turaki-led committee group. The 5 grant of appeal, notice of appeal. There is nothing that has to do with issue of a suspension or expulsion in it. The grants are about internal affairs and jurisdiction of the court. That's all. Let's even admit that the court affirmed that, you see, I know where they are coming from. They are just trying to use that. When the court is looking at a judgment or delivering its judgment, it will evaluate evidence before it. And at the lower court, I remember the Federal High Court, if you recall, there was a dispute between the Damagu and the legal advisor, Ajibade, regarding who should appoint counsel to represent the party. And the court affirmed that it's only the legal advisor that can appoint a counsel that will represent the party. Then when they now go to the Court of Appeal, at that time, the Ajibade and Co have been suspended. So the counsel to Turaki-led group for them to be able to appear for the party. They now raise the issue of we are coming here to appear on behalf of the party because the legal advisor has been suspended. And the court said if legal advisor has been suspended, the party has the right to appoint. That was what they called the term as confirmation of suspension. Look at the judgment. Go and look at the judgment. When you, as a lawyer, when you see, even not lawyer, when you carry cities of a judgment, the judgment is said. Everything being said before the judgment itself is the conclusion. The court will say hereby order. That is the judgment. The other things are just evaluation of evidence and finding of the court. So whatever the court finds, and it didn't make any pronouncement on it.
Okay, then
Abdulhamid. Of the court.
All right, then Abdulhamid.
That's just a
all right.
There is no.
Okay, then Abdulhamid, thank you.
Anthony, one of the issues that was raised was that, the convention that your team proceeded having was despite court order, was against court order. Was it a mistake for your faction to proceed with the convention despite the existing court order? Because now it seems like everybody's like, yeah, whatever the Supreme Court says. So why was that particular court order not obeyed?
No idea why it was not obeyed. I will not sit down like my friend and justify culpable nonsense, right? I will never sit down. I'm a lawyer. I will never ever advise anybody to disobey court order, no matter where it is coming from. So let's agree to that. Also, how do 4 people who are suspended, the process for a convention follows this system? The NWC, the caucus meets, the NWC meets, the BOT meets, then the caucus meets. Then the next day, NEC is called. It is at NEC that a convention is called for so that you can now elect new officers. PDP had done most of that and had transmitted letters to INEC. This affair, like he rightfully said, at the court of first instance, PDP was denied the right of presenting his case because Ajibade, who had already compromised and was working with this Iron group, had sent a lawyer who did not present the case for PDP, sabotaged the case. And this was what PDP raised when they went to the Court of Appeal and asked the Court of Appeal to make a pronouncement. If you read that judgment, a judgment, and my dear friend is saying the other, a judgment is a body. It carries both the obiter, both the decision, why, the reason for that decision. It carries, and that actually carries weight anywhere you go. Read the judgment from the Court of Appeal. It says that Iron was suspended and that the court does not find any document that actually lifted that suspension. So the court believes that suspension was due. Let me even say this, without even going too far. And the most interesting part of it is that it is not even by a proactive measure of the PDP. It is even just inadvertently that it always happens. Samuel Iron was due to be expelled from the party. He was expelled by this National Disciplinary Committee, led by Chief Tom Kim. He went to the Federal High Court. The Federal High Court under Justice Liman was very brutal when it responded to him and said that every step that needed to be taken to expel him had been taken. This is a judgment. We're not talking about, if my friend says, okay, this is a judgment, there's a judgment. A standing judgment that Aaron has now appealed. If it didn't matter, he wouldn't appeal it now. He would have just gone on. He says there's no case in court. But there's that case that Aaron has appealed to the appeal court that he wasn't suspended. No, the basis of this is that 4 people who had been expelled from the party or suspended went and congregated themselves and conducted a congress without the BOT of the party, without the neck of the party approving. So
Anthony, are you saying, Anthony? Anthony, hang on a second. Anthony,
we have allowed him.
Just a second. I'm a bit confused here. Are you saying that your group still maintains that you are the legitimate? Your stance in this whole dispute is legitimate. I'm asking that specifically because it goes on to another question.
Okay, so now let me say this.
If you can answer it summarily.
No, there's nobody. The legitimate people who have taken charge of the party is the BOT. As it were, the BOT has read all the judgments.
Okay.
Has read what the Court of Appeal has said. My friend read that Court of Appeal was 30 days. If he reads that Court of Appeal judgment, well, I can read it verbatim for you.
So is your group...
The judge was specific. Let me read specifically what the judge said to you so that we don't confuse issues here.
Okay, real quick.
It is as clear as... It's real quick.
Okay.
The judge says, the court is not concerned with the legality or otherwise. Just the fact that K.A. Ajibade, the national legal advisor of the party, was suspended. I have not seen anywhere in the records that the said suspension was lifted. So during the time of the suspension, K.A. Ajibade ceased to be and act as the national legal advisor of the party. He therefore could no longer perform his enshrined party constitutional duty either as a suspended member or as national legal advisor. Don't forget that this suspension carries the garment of the four of them. And the four of them are the same people who went and constituted this joke they call the National Working Committee of Caretaker, then evolved themselves into an NWC. Nobody is going to take that serious. The people who are in charge of the party today.
So if you do not believe, in disobeying court orders, and the court has,
the Supreme Court order has been followed.
Okay.
The Supreme Court order has been followed to the letter. Raki doesn't address himself anywhere as the national chairman of
Abdulhamid, you must...
The people that are in charge of the party have released a statement.
All right, Anthony. Abdulhamid, I'm sure you have something to say regarding all the contributions he has made.
Yeah.
You can see, we are talking about Supreme Court. He's going back to a Court of Appeal. When the Supreme Court speaks, do you have to refer to Court of Appeal again? We are talking, let him tell me the judgment of the Supreme Court, where it was specifically stated that in view of the fact that this has happened, though, we hereby nullify your confession. We hereby nullify your membership of the PDP. Where is it stated in that Supreme Court judgment? None. There was no, if a case is filed, you file an appeal, and the court says your appeal is dismissed, it means all your requests was not granted. Again, if you look at the notice of appeal they file, what if you have a judgment that favors you? Are you going to be appealing against that judgment? If you look at there's a part in the notice of appeal where they will say which part are you appealing against? They say the entire judgment. The entire judgment. And that was what went to Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said all your requests at this appeal is hereby dismissed or are hereby dismissed. So what is it talking about? You see, the suspension they are talking about, he just being clever. I respect him. He's a lawyer. He's a very respected lawyer. A very good lawyer. That matter. And that's why he's trying to avoid it, trying to go to Court of Appeal instead of Supreme Court. So you see, the point is that as it is today, ask him. The case, he said, the iron file. The appeal has been withdrawn because it was filed in error by him, and it's been advised to withdraw it, and it's been withdrawn. As I speak to you today, there was no case in court that challenged that interim committee if they believe it's not proper. Is it them that would determine that it's not proper or the court? They did not go to court to challenge it. That interim committee tenure expired. They constituted a committee to organize convention. The convention was held, and the new leadership were elected. There was, as I speak to you today again, there's no case in court against that convention. So where would the Supreme Court now say that NWC is now nullified? Where? Where is the place where, if you recall,
so this has become a case. This has become a case over the courts, whether federal, whether appeal, whether supreme.
Now that you said that,
let me down.
Okay, real quick.
Where the court appeal was initially done, this similar story they are narrating was narrated that time. They were talking about suspension. No, the court has said BOT will take over. They said the same thing that time, if you recall. They are trying to play the same game now. You see, the matter has been settled. They have a choice either to align with the or move to another party. In any event, they are already romancing
Anthony. Anthony, I wanted to ask, but the way you're laughing, I believe you want to just add something. So let me just allow you to do that. Please go on.
I've just read verbatim.
Just a second, Abdulhamid.
I've just read verbatim to you the Court of Appeal judgment, which they cross-appeal. And if he wants, I will read the cross-appeal that Ajibade filed, knowing the danger of what he, and that cross appeal was the second judgment the Supreme Court gave, that it threw away that cross appeal and upheld the decision of the appeal court. When you cross appeal something, what are you cross appealing for? What did they cross appeal for? If there was no problem, they would have left it. And the same way now they are trying to avoid that. They say Ayahu has withdrawn because they've told him that it's because you have appealed it. Now everybody is thinking that it happened. There is a subsisting judgment of the Federal High Court expelling Ayahu. It was clear, and he was the one that even went to court. That's the most interesting part.
Well, can you explain to us here the hierarchy when the Supreme Court has already made its own ruling?
No, you see, the Supreme Court responded to the issue of the National Convention, and I have not argued that with you.
Okay.
And I have not said that National Convention was super. As a lawyer, if you are giving, and that's why my friend here is just, we have to interpret. We want to help Nigeria. So there is a Court of Appeal judgment. It stands. The statement is that Ayahu was suspended. Ajibade was suspended. Therefore, Ayahu and all the others that were suspended with Ajibade did not have the legal position to do anything on behalf of PDP. It is as clear as daylight. As clear as daylight to everybody. So we know this.
So Anthony, now that the Supreme Court has, ruled on this matter and we've agreed, what does continued division inside of PDP mean? Does it mean that there's no ability to govern itself internally?
Thank you. Let me tell you. You see this confusion that is happening. Let me say something. What has the leadership of this group? Have you ever seen them issue a statement against this government? Never. They will not do it. Ask him. If I ask him, is Tinubu doing well? He will tell you yes. Ask him if he can say no to it. Because
that's a loaded response. So there. That's a very loaded response.
This is in furtherance of the agenda.
Okay.
The leader of that group said,
honestly, Anthony, hang on a second, Anthony. The question that Queen asked was regarding the state of leadership inside of the PDP. Your response is loaded. We don't have enough time for it is the reason. We don't have enough time for your response. Okay, real quick.
My last take on this that Nigerians must understand that there is a set of people who are empowered by the presidency, President Tinubu and APC to work and destabilize PDP so that PDP cannot present any candidate anywhere. This result you see here is the end goal they have. And they are happy with it. Because why would anybody, knowing what the Supreme Court has said, knowing what the Appeal Court has said, and the BOT has said, okay, you know what, everybody, pause everything. We are the conscience of the party. We are an organ of the party. We are taking charge. The party, if there is any problem, the BOT takes charge of the party.
Okay,
the BOT has taken charge.
Anthony,
look at what it is saying that BOT members
Anthony, like I said, we've run out of time. I would like to take that as your final submission. Please, Abdulhamid, if you can give us your final take before we go.
I just want to say that, look, if let me admit and not concede that there's a judgment against suspension. That would not be a ground to say their what's it called, legitimacy is being challenged. If the legitimacy is being challenged, they will have to go back to court and rely on that particular judgment to say, in view of this judgment, these people have no right to lead our party. That's what they are supposed to do, not that or to interpret the law on their own and say, because they say you have been suspended, therefore you are no longer our leader. No, they have to challenge that interim committee. They have to challenge the validity of the Abuja Convention and challenge and use that suspension as a grant to set it aside in court. That's what they're supposed to do. Again, they are also romancing. They are blaming somebody for working for. So that's why we're here. Are they not romancing with ADC? Are they not planning to have one candidate?
Is your group romancing with?
Gentlemen, not to support the president.
But wait.
That's our natural.
Anthony,
that's where we are supposed to try.
Anthony,
we are supposed to work for the people.
Anthony,
not for the government like you are doing.
Anthony, please, Abdulhamid, are you romancing with the APC or not?
I don't know about that. I'm not romancing with APC. I'm a PDP member.
All right, Gentlemen, thank you very much for a very interesting
Your leader consistently says he's working for President Tinubu. Your leader.
All right.
Your national leader.
Anthony, Abdulhamid, I'm going to have to step in here and say that this
Gentlemen, Gentlemen, we've
right.
had a lot to talk about. Of course, it's still ongoing. And again, we've agreed to the Supreme Court. Court's decision can close cases. They do not always close divides. For the PDP, the legal chapter may be ending, but, you know, we have things to sort out. But thank you, gentlemen, for joining and having this conversation with us. And we hope that everything will be resolved.
We hope we can have it again, actually.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now let's go on a quick break. When we return, we start another conversation. Stay with us.
An explosive one, maybe. Welcome back. It's yet another conversation. This time, let's talk about your pockets. Yes, indeed. The central bank's new regulations around the bank verification number are aimed at tightening control within Nigeria's financial system. At a time when digital transactions are rising and fraud is also becoming more sophisticated, the push is clear. Strengthen identity, close loopholes, and make financial activities more traceable. But regulation always carries a balance. While the goal is security, questions still remain around access, privacy, and implementation. For millions of Nigerians, especially those on the margin of the banking system, how these rules are applied will matter as much as what they intend to achieve.
And to unpack this, we are joined by Toyin Alasi, CEO of MoneyWise International, and Stanley Onora, economic analyst and fintech advocate. I was about to say gentlemen, but Stanley and Toyin, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, let me start with you, Toyin. These new regulations appear to deepen the role of BVN in identifying verification. What in your practical terms is this in general? Can you just give us a little update on it?
The new CBN BVN rules are just to tighten fraud, mostly digital fraud, not all of it, but mostly digital fraud. And a few of them are the ones that Nigerians have an outcry about. You have the fact that you can't use more than one device for your banking app now. And then when you have to change the device, you have a 20,000 naira limit. Once you move to a new device, which is a lot of constraints, people are complaining, but that lasts for only 24 hours and it only gives you time to be able to, go to your bank and activate your new device. Yeah. The other ones are around the phone number, which is the main issue where you can only update the number on your BVN just once in a lifetime. And I think that's where the major issues are. Now, we also have the one where minors are no longer allowed to have an account independent of their guardian or parents this time. So if you're not 18 years plus, you don't have a BVN, and as such, you don't have the right to run an account yourself. It has to be managed by your guardian or parent. And those are the issues. I think those are the major rules. We also have the one around, I think most of them are sub-rules under the main rules, which include the change of phone number, the device, and then, of course, the age limits that has now been activated.
So on paper, these sound like proper. They sound like it's supposed to aid security. But Obina, why is this ruffling feathers? Why are people, chattering in the background about what the CBN is about to do with the BVN?
The whole issue is arising from mainly the phone number change. Now, for most people, which I expressed like on my platform, for most people that based on what we know as Nigeria, if you live in the diaspora at the moment, you probably might have forgotten that you have a Nigerian number, and maybe you're using a number that is active over there, and that number has been sold to somebody else by the telcos because they have a duration that they can't keep a number.
Yes.
What happens to that kind of person in changing a phone number? What if for security reasons, maybe I attain like a particular status in life and I do know I want to discontinue a phone number for some reason and I need to change my number. So now there are different circumstances that can arise from a person deciding to discontinue a number. It could be due to personal reasons, political reasons, religious. So we live in an economy that, in an environment that is very dynamic. So what happens in those instances? Or so something just happens. So let's just put all that together. It means that you can't only change your number once. I feel like you should be able to have a rigorous process before your number is changed. It could go through hoops. It could be that you should write to the bank and wait 2 weeks, write to the CBN, or have like a board that needs to review this over a period of time. But once I personally, I do not subscribe to it.
So what's the effect on those who bank on the fringes, those in rural communities, for instance? How bad is this going to affect them, Stanley? Correction, Stanley, not Obina. I said Obina before Stanley. My apologies. How is this going to affect them?
Okay, so for most people, at the instance, there is nothing that will really affect them because your BVN number, if you really check it, what do you do with your BVN number? The times that you need to activate to use the number on your BVN, maybe when you are applying to, there are certain fintech applications that will only allow you to send a number to the registered BVN number, or things that you have to do maybe with the CBN in terms of the Form M's and filling those form. I think Form M's Form Q's when we used to have back in the day when we used to have PTA and BTA. That's personal travel allowance and business travel allowance that you used to receive from the CBN. All those things were tied to the number and the email on your BVN. Now, for the average man or the average user or bank or average customer of any bank that is on the fringes, like you mentioned, they wouldn't really have any input on what to do right now. But if peradventure there is need for them to have something that requires them to activate the numbers on their BVN and they can't remember it or they've lost it, at that time they fall into this thing. But for a vast majority of people, they might not encounter a problem like this.
Okay.
Well, Tony, from a fintech perspective, startups rely, of course, on speed and accessibility. How do these new rules affect innovation in that space?
Okay, so we are in an economy that is managed and controlled. It's expected that things will change from time to time. So if you are into business, you should be informed, or you should keep abreast of what's going on in the economy where you run a business. Be that as it may, there's been a lot of awareness. Even though I know it's not enough, I actually believe that it's not enough. Apart from people like me and Stanley, who do this a lot on their platforms, there's not been much awareness, let me put it that way. So for a small business owner, I think the practices remain the same. If you have, for example, there was a deadline of 1st of May, which was yesterday given. Did you update the number? Did you check anything? Because those are the areas where it can affect you. Personally, yes, it might be once in a lifetime, but we had up to 1st of May to update the numbers. So you could still keep your once in a lifetime option. But as the case may be, many Nigerians don't do such things. So as a small business owner, make sure your BVN is updated. I would recommend having a primary phone number. Just like Stanley said, if I'm a person of worth and I need to change my number for any reason, I think at this point, lifestyle changes are called for. You have to learn to have a primary number that you probably secure. It's for your BVN. Keep it secure. Keep it limited to other things. It's just for that purpose. That's a bit hard, but this is where we are today.
So if these regulations are supposed to help us against data fraud, are we sure that this time they're going to get it right? Because we've seen these changes many, many times. Yes, I do know that fraud is also advancing itself, but is this a surefire way of, first of, unifying all the different data that we have when it comes to our banking, and then also protecting us against fraud as it's evolving itself? Do you think it's adequate, Tony?
I don't think it's adequate 100%. Why I say that is because when you think about a fraud like SIM swap, sometimes when these digital fraudsters walk into a telco, they don't exactly just give your identity to them and say, I lost my SIM, because they've gotten all your data. So they go, and they do this through different means. Phishing. They send you email, they send you fake bank alerts, you got a fake call, and they extracted data from you, take it to the telcos. We found out that it is not just the fact that they claim your identity. Many times the telco staff partner with them. And so how do you rectify that aspect? I think a layer to that, which I think is effective and helps, is even if your SIM is successfully swapped, right? The person who swaps it can no longer take more than 20K from you, even if they succeed. I think that addendum to the rule then gives us a bit of calm. So I would say in a little way, they try to tighten the ends, but you know as it is, fraud evolves. They're going to find better ways to crack it.
Why? So Stanley, aka Obina from...
No, Obina. Oh, no. I'm sorry I keep making that mistake. Okay. My apologies.
So what do you think individuals and businesses should be doing? Like Tony said, we don't know. Things will keep changing from time to time. And of course, fraudsters will adjust and God knows what else. But what should individuals and businesses be doing now to stay compliant and to avoid disruption?
Well, for most businesses, the rule doesn't disrupt your business as it stands. It's not affecting your day-to-day activity, your banking activities. So, but what you should do is that you should have your ears open. Just like Tony said, you can have a primary number that you are going to just say, this number, I'm reserving it. The telcos have the services that they can reserve your number for maybe like 2,000, 2,500 for like 2 years. And even if you're not recharging that number and you can just keep it on the side, you know that number is secure. You can do that every 2 years. Yeah, they have those services. And even if you recharge your phone with 200 Naira monthly, you're covered. So these things are easy to do, but the implementation as an individual is where it now comes to work. And for a lot of our people in diaspora, I need to speak to that. For the people in diaspora, they need to know that their phone numbers that are tied to their bank account and their BVN is something that is important. Because I've seen many instances where people bought a new SIM and started receiving alerts from...
Oh, yes, absolutely. That is a very common occurrence. Yeah. In fact, I've had numbers call me on new SIMs that are asking for one specific individual, and I've been led to believe that this belonged to that person. And I also received certain alerts, and I'm like, hang on, what's going on? So I do see what the CBN is trying to do, but then this seems to be a very big loophole because it doesn't seem to be in conformity with what the telcos are doing if they are in charge of communications. Are they also carrying along the telcos regarding this new BVN rule and one SIM, one BVN issue? It doesn't seem so, or at least we haven't heard anything regarding that. Stanley, do continue.
Okay, so for that's why the primary responsibility lies on the user. So as an individual, it's your duty to protect your data. Because the telcos are broad and wouldn't know who at a particular time has swapped SIM or somebody has passed on. Because one of the things that we tend to forget is that there is a cost for every SIM and keeping it active on the telco part. I don't know if we know that. So there is a cost to leaving a line active. So for every telco, they need to ensure that it's a business, that there is utility and there is that this SIM is a business unit that is continuous, there's business continuity on that SIM. So if after a period, it's assumed that either you're no longer interested or maybe the person might have passed on. So how do you checkmate that? That's why you say, okay, you've kept your SIM for maybe like a year or two. I think the maximum is 2 years for most of the telcos. So within that time, if you do not renew it, they give you an extra like grace period of about 3 months to 6 months, and then the line can be reassigned to someone else. That's why you're able to get lines that are maybe like for the likes of the MTN 0803 or 002 for Airtel and 005, which are the initial numbers that came out, that were rolled out earlier when those telcos came into the country. You shouldn't be able to get those numbers right now because they have been fully assigned. But because a lot of people have passed on and all that, now the primary responsibility lies on you and your next of kin or dependents to make sure that your data is secure. And that's why when the CBN comes up with these rules, it's now on you to make sure that you find a way to keep that in check. And for the telcos, I don't know if CBN has something in alignment with them that ensures that those kind of activities, you don't get alerts like this.
Tony, what do you?
I don't know how it's really.
Tony, what do you think? Tony, do you think this is time to call for sanitization of inactive SIMs by the CBN to the telcos?
Well, there's no better time. And I think that's part of why the Keep My Number service came up, so that people could keep their numbers longer. I want to believe that the partnership exists, and the regulators and the telcos have been in conversations. And so right now, I kept my number when I traveled. I was able to keep my number. So you can actually keep your number for at least 3 years right now. I think there's even a 5-year service. The charges are different, but you can keep it for that long. So for those in diaspora, what I would recommend is right now, a lot of banks are able to, put your international number, which is the active line you use, as your BVN number. They can do that. Many people already have that infrastructure to do that. As long as you can get SMS or communication via that line, you can update it. And then whenever you come into the country, get your Nigerian line, try to keep it. There are steps around these things. I also believe that there's no hard and fast rule to anything. The rules are made for men, and we can alter them at the time. Even if you've exhausted your once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, you can still correct that. It might be a stricter verification process, like Stanley mentioned. They can ask you, there are ways you do these things. I mean, once you're in diaspora, maybe through your embassy or a video verification system from your bank. Again, the implementation actually depends on existing bank infrastructure. Many banks who already have customers in diaspora already know how they manage these customers and handle their transactions. So it will ride on the same platform that exists.
I don't know when the last time it was for either of you entering inside of a telco or even a bank to try and change any of these details. It can be really exhausting, trust me.
I try not to.
But I guess from what you both are saying is no cause for alarm, just follow the orders, Abi.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Tony Elassie and Stanley Honora, for joining us and having this conversation. We do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was nice being.
Now let's go on a quick break. Be safe out there. When we come back, our next conversation starts. Stay with us.
Welcome back. It's still Breakfast Extra, but let's do the headlines. My name is Mazino Apil. Our President Bola Tinubu will depart Abuja on Saturday for a 3-nation trip to France, Kenya, and Rwanda, where he will attend major summits focused on investment, economic growth, climate action, and strategic partnerships. The president's first stop will be France before heading to Nairobi, Kenya, for the Africa-France Summit scheduled for May 11 and 12. The meeting, co-chaired by French President Emmanuel Macron and Kenyan President William Ruto, will address emergency, or rather energy transition, digital transformation, green industrialization, and climate action. Tinubu will then travel to Kigali, Rwanda, for the Africa CEO Forum from May 14 to 15, where business leaders and investors will discuss regional integration and Africa's economic transformation. And Nigeria has assumed the chairmanship of the Africa Union Peace and Security Council for May 2026. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs announced the development in an official statement. Officials say Nigeria remains the only member state with continuous representation on the council since 2004 and last held the position in December 2022. The statement states it will apply its institutional experience during the session. The agenda includes security challenges in West Africa and the Sahel, alongside plans for counterterrorism strategy, maritime coordination, and the African Standby Force. Policy expert Jake joined us on the news, and this was his take.
I think they should focus on having a strategic, achievable, with timeline, agenda setting. They should be able to set agenda for peaceful coexistence of the region, the West African region, the Central African region, the entire Africa as a region. There's a need for them to embark on conflict resolutions countries that have internal wars, external wars. Places like Sudan should be on the agenda. Congo Republic should be on an agenda. Tanzania is brewing. That has been a peaceful country. So basically they should set the agenda for peaceful resolution, conflict resolution within the region, and to also prepare the region for the UN. The UN had not really been fair to African countries in terms of their position in the Security Council. So this can be a very good move.
Rising xenophobic attacks in South Africa, the Nigerian Consulate and the Nigerian Citizens Association in South Africa have arranged free repatriation flights for Nigerians willing to return home permanently. Many Nigerians have shut down their shops and businesses as violent anti-foreigner protests spread across cities, including Johannesburg, Pretoria, and Durban. The unrest has led to harassment, looting, injuries, and growing fear among foreign nationals, forcing many to remain indoors for safety. Authorities also confirmed the deaths of 2 Nigerians in separate attacks, deepening concerns over the worsening situation. And in the Middle East now, U.S. President Donald Trump has expressed dissatisfaction with Iran's latest proposal to end the conflict. He stated that the options remain either reaching an agreement or launching decisive strikes. The remarks followed reports that Tehran submitted a revised proposal through Pakistan as diplomatic efforts continue. Officials say discussions remain stalled despite a temporary ceasefire. And that's all the news this hour. Do stay with us. We've got more conversation inside of Breakfast Extra.
For many Nigerians, work has become a negotiation between effort and survival. Rising living costs, unstable income, and limited protections has reshaped what it means to earn a living. The idea of dignity in labor is still present, but often challenged by reality. This year's May Day conversation reflects that tension. Workers are not just asking for better pay, they are asking for fairness, protection, and systems that recognize the value of their labor. From formal employment to the informal sector, the concerns are broad, but the message is consistent.
Hence, we are joined now by Iraoluwa Oguntuase. He's a labor law expert, and he joins us to take a look at the Nigerian system when it comes to labor laws. Thank you very much for joining us, Iraoluwa.
Thank you for having me.
Iraoluwa,
Happy Workers' Day.
Thank you very much. Iraoluwa, over the week, we put together a package focused at the May Day events and workers in Nigeria. We're going to take a look at that package, and then when we come back, we'll ask you a few questions.
Quiet Street, usually known for being busy, is the first sight on this Workers' Day. But on further interaction from civil servants to market traders and even gig workers, the conversation was the same.
Let's compare the fuel price now, 1,300 plus. Somebody collecting 70,000 naira, he cannot fill the tank of his car with that 70,000 naira. How will he survive for the whole month?
There is a minimum that is required as a standard. That is how much a person that earns is supposed to spend per day globally. So now, if we convert this to rates, we would see that our minimum wage is actually nowhere near.
That underpay, they should work on it. Because with the present situation of Nigeria now, the economy, the price of things, our workers are not very well paid.
Some private sector, some organizations do pay their workers, their staff well. But some exploitation, no, most exploit workers.
While some in the formal sector cited steady salaries, many in the informal economy pointed to unstable daily income as their biggest worry. An economist summed it all up.
Nigerian workers are not actually being commiserated well enough with their pay as it should be. And we all know why. First reason is that their wages has always been constant over a period of time, while inflation keeps rising. And when inflation rises and wages remains constant, it means that their income, their salaries will be eroded, and that will reduce their purchasing power.
For many Nigerians, income is no longer limited to a single source. Side hustles, small businesses, and digital opportunities are becoming essential in navigating rising living costs. And a new conversation on hourly wage payment versus the known monthly salary is struggling for attention.
If we have an economy that depends on hourly rates, it means we would have to function 24 hours. All workplaces would be operational 24 hours. We don't have that. We don't have the basic amenities to run that.
I think hourly will be nice because I know I'm still working till 11 p.m. People still calling me, blah, 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 blah. So to me, hourly will be fine because I will earn more with hourly.
I actually prefer if you can actually change to that system. It's actually good because if you look at the UK, the US, they actually work per hours. And it's actually okay because you can actually work per hours and you can also plan other things.
As the holiday winds down, the message from the Nigerian workforce is loud and clear. They are asking tough questions about income security, inflation, and overcoming an ever-widening cost of living burden. In Lagos for News Central, Nasir Agbalaya.
Welcome back. Thank you very much, Nasir, for such a stellar report. Now, Iraoluwa is still with us. Iraoluwa Oguntuashe, thank you very much for staying with us. Let's talk about the Nigerian worker and how protected they are by the labor laws against all these factors that seem to want to kill them. Iraoluwa, do you think that our labor laws are actually for the Nigerian worker at all?
Well, I need to distinguish between what it is and what it ought to be. So when we talk about what it ought to be, what we're trying to say is that what the law ought to do. And when we talk of what it is, we're talking of the existential reality now. Yes, to answer your question, I will say that the provisions of the relevant labor laws is still a little bit far cry, to the extent of protecting the interest of the workers. And I'm going to demystify it. I'm going to pick the laws one after the other. Now, let's talk of the main central law, which is the provision of the Labor Act, the Nigerian Labor Act. Now, we need to understand something. The Nigerian Labor Act that we're still using now, unfortunately, is extremely anachronistic. It is antediluvian in the sense that it is old. It is a relic from the 1974 Labor Decree that we're still using now. And it is extremely unfortunate because the provisions that are there in the 1974, to what extent are they applicable now? We talk of Section 91, that is interpretative, the interpretative provision, and we look at the meaning of wages there. Now, when you're playing the video, the documentary, some people said, and I quite agree with them, that workers should be paid hourly. That's exactly the way it should be. But if we look at the definition of wages, in Section 91 of the Labor Act, does it even mention or refer to the fact that wages will be paid hourly? Now, there are a lot of relics in that provision that should have been removed because of the global changes in the world of work generally. So to that extent, we can say that the Nigerian Labor Act has done nothing to protect the interests of the workers. Now, but for the judges of the National Industrial Court that are true, the fact that they make decisions that are now trying to enact some laws by reason of judicial precedent, it wouldn't have been okay at all. But how many employees can even afford to go to National Industrial Court? And even if they go to National Industrial Court, how many employees can even, withstand the waiting period, the excruciating litigation period that it normally takes to get a judgment, if they're going to get at all? So that's for the Nigerian Labor Act. Now, let's go to the Minimum Wage Act that also appears to be on the front burner because, we've talked about minimum wage, and minimum wage is actually very central in also ensuring the dignity of workers. Section 4. The period, I remember I appeared on this TV station, and when they're trying to amend the minimum wage, I made reference to Section 4 that provides to exceptions. Is a proviso to the categories of employers that may choose not to comply with the provision of the minimum wage. And the Section 4, subsection 1 states that, number one, If an employer has less than 25 employees, he may not comply. Number two, if the employees are on part-time basis, in other words, contract basis, they may not comply with the provision. Number three, if the employee are paid on commission basis, on piecemeal basis, they may not comply. And I express danger in that when we talk of the minimum wage, that is very central, that is a central law to the provision of wages. Don't let us forget that by virtue of Section 6 of the minimum wage, it provides for a tripartite committee. So that means that each of the states cannot even have their own minimum wage law. So we all rely on the provision of the minimum wage act. The implication of this is that this law will apply mutatis mutandis, to the federal government as well as to all the states too, with respect to the minimum wage. Now, in a situation where we have provisions, exclusion provisions, some employers, especially in the private sector, may hide on this. But beyond this, the provision of the minimum wage has increased from, I think, 30,000 to 70,000 effective from 29th of July 2024. Right. Now, as part of the interviewees have rightly commended, to what extent is this sufficient to protect the interest of the workers? To what extent is this sufficient for take-home? Taking consideration of the fact that there are a lot of issues, infrastructural deficits in Nigeria, high cost of living, inflation at double-digit, foodflation, high cost of medical. So we can assure ourselves, or we can tell ourselves that the minimum wage, the provision therein, particularly increase from 30,000 to 70,000, is doing nothing to assuage the worker.
So,
now, let's now go to the social.
Before you continue, I know that you have a lot to say, but you've talked about the minimum wage. Would you say that the first thing we're supposed to focus on now, should it be the minimum wage or the relic laws that have been in place for decades?
Well, I think it should be done concurrently. That's my position. And when I say it should be done concurrently, now we have issues of the relic laws. The relic laws should be amended. I don't know what I don't know what our lawmakers are doing. I don't know what our committee on employment, both in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, I don't know what they are doing, because this thing is actually on the front burner. If they are not saying it so, I'm saying it so, and I think majority of the Nigerians are saying it so. So I think that the relics, the antiquated provisions in the Labour Act and other relevant legislation should have been amended, like the Factories Act too. Now, in addition to that, the issue of the minimum wage, or the issue of increasing minimum wage, to better the lives of the employee, is something that will continuously be on the front burner. So, the amending the provision of the Labour Act in order to conform with the changes that we're experiencing in the world of work is one thing that should be done. That should be done speedily, swiftly, and also, trying as much as possible to amend the provision of the minimum wage and insert or agree on a minimum wage that will favor the workers, that would assuage their feelings to a very big extent, is also another thing. So it's something that should be done concurrently. Now, let me quickly say something on the minimum wage. When people talk about the minimum wage, I think what they focus on mostly is they focus on the government. But they are not, but we should not forget that, like I said before, it's a tripartite committee. It involves the government, it involves the workers, and it also involves the private employers. Now, people are not focusing on the private employers. So if the government, or the government as largest employer of labor in Nigeria, increase minimum wage and they are complying with it, what of the private employers? What is the Ministry of Labor doing in ensuring that there is also compliance on the part of the private employer? Because I tell you, if you make a survey of the number of private employers that are complying with the minimum wage in Nigeria, you'll still see that some private employers are falling short of this. And that's why I made reference to the Section 4 earlier. Because if private employer sees that, okay, I may choose not to comply with the provision of the minimum wage by hiding under the provision of Section 4, they will do it. So that's a mischief that is in the provision of the minimum wage act that also needs to be addressed. So to answer your question, I think that amending the provision, amending the relics in the relevant labor legislation, and also increasing the provision of the minimum wage with regards to minimum wage is something that should be done at the same time. One cannot be left for the other.
Yeah, but do workers know about this, whether individually or in groups? If they don't, what action could they take when these matters are actually pressing down on them, on their survival? And I think that's the stem of today's conversation, that workers are going through so much pressure, and most of them are, well, many of them are unaware of their rights. But what could they do, either as individuals or collective, to be able to impress these challenges that they're facing? And I think that question is for all of Nigeria.
Thank you, Mr. Mazino. I don't know what the trade unions are doing. We have a lot of trade union association. They are regulated by the Trade Union Act. By reason of Section 1, subsection 1 of the Trade Union, it defines trade union as combination of employers and workers that are being formed for the purpose of protecting the interests of their members. Nigerian Labour Congress is a central trade union. Trade Union Congress is a central trade union. And we all have all other sectoral trade unions regulating their relevant sectors. I think it behoves them to consistently enlighten their members on their rights, their duties, and responsibilities. I don't think by having this conversation on TV station, I don't think that only can do it, because how many people are even watching TVs? How many people have money to subscribe to DSTVs and other digital satellite platforms that could enable them to listen to this conversation? So I think one-on-one engagement by the trade unions will do a lot. And beyond that, I also think that, political will on the part of the government, and I keep emphasizing this, political will on the part of the government would also do a lot. Now, there are some other countries, other developed countries that have the political will. What are we doing as a country? So it's not only enough for us to be having this discussion. I think a lot of responsibility lies on the part of the government, a lot of responsibility lies on the part of the trade union, and a lot of individual responsibility also lies on ourselves as employees. When you are working somewhere, have you bothered to know or consider what your right is? Now, we have a lot of simple platforms that we can get to know, even by checking on AI. By just typing it on Google, AI will bring out several options for you. So all these things are what employees can leverage on, but I don't know the extent to which they are trying to consider this. But it is very important for employees to know their rights, and it's very important for them to endeavor to do so.
So, Irelu, of course, you mentioned that, TV is going extinct. I think we agree.
It's not so.
And a lot of people don't barely watch TV as much. And I understand that. So, meaning we have to find other means to get this, conversation across to people. Now, we've seen that, of course, the government were fighting insecurity, were fighting, extrajudicial killings. There's so many things that is happening in Nigeria. Why do you think that the minimum wage and workers are being put, on the sideline? It doesn't feel like an urgent situation, and how do we move from that to make it to make the country see that this is an urgent situation for the citizens? Irelua.
Well, it's unfortunate that the government is not taking this issue seriously, because the workers remain the goose that lays the golden egg. I will not lie to you. They are the goose that lays the golden egg. They work, they keep the economy going. If the workers are not working, imagine a situation when the country is on strike for, let's say, 2 or 3 days, and it's being reported how much the country is losing within that short period of time. So we need to understand that for every country, the working population is very important. And even further to that, the working population also constitutes the larger percentage of the population. We have the working population and we have the dependency population. But the working population is more. So to the extent in which the working population constitutes the larger percentage, I think it is also very significant, for the government to know that this is something that needs to be put on the front burner. Of course, I agree with you. There are some other issues. We have the issue of security, which is also on the front burner, but let's even take note of it. And I will make this argument without prejudice to anybody that may oppose me. Now, if workers are well paid, you can tell yourself that part of the people that are involved in crime, they are also workers, whether they are part of the formal sector or they are part of the informal sector, but they are employees too. So if this issue of minimum wage has been taken, and government also ensure as much as possible to provide a lot of social securities for workers, both formal sector and the informal sector, we may also witness, or we will, we will also witness a decline in the level of crime, in the level of insecurity, because both are inextricably linked together. It is someone who is hungry, who has not eaten, that may be thinking of crime. Larger percentage of the people that commit crime, I put up the argument, they are committing it because they don't have nothing to do. They are not even earning as much as they're supposed to end. Of course, I know that there may be several arguments against this, but it's also something that we need to consider. When you look at criminals, part of the things you also see in them, of course, we have recidivists. We have people that, whether they like it or not, they're going to commit crimes. But when you look at criminals, the first thing you look for is that, do they have another option? So if they have another option, why are we not providing other options? So that's one of the things I think the government look out for in combating crimes.
Well, Irelua, thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation. And indeed, it's something that we don't need to put at the side burner. It's something we need to figure about, because if everybody's earning well and able to manage the situation at hand, we believe we'll see some, reduced crimes. So thank you for joining us and having this conversation, Irelua.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and do have a productive day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Now, let's go on a short break. When we return, we have our last conversation in Breakfast Extra. Stay with us.
Welcome back for our final conversation here on Breakfast Extra. And today, let's talk about the ADC, yet again, inside of another dispute that involves the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court has restored the David Mark-led executive of the ADC, bringing legal closure to a leadership dispute that has lingered within the party for a while now. The ruling settles the question of authority, but like many political conflicts, it also reveals deeper structural tensions. For a party still defining its place in Nigeria's political landscape, stability is very crucial. This decision offers an opportunity to reset the party, but whether that opportunity is used effectively depends on how the restored leadership manages the internal divisions.
Right. And of course, we're joined by Sam Amadi, who's the director of the Abuja School of Social and Political Thought. Mr. Amadi, thank you and good morning for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Mr. Madi, this ruling clearly establishes legal leadership within the ADC. Now, from your perspective, what does this mean about, what does this say about internal party governance in Nigeria?
Well, first, I think I would like to say it speaks more about the deteriorations in this republic since 2023, since the last election. We've seen deterioration in party leadership. Now, some people may attribute this to failure of party leaders, but I think it's a problem of an emerging political environment. If you look at the literature out there in the world around what they call political regression, democratic regression, democratic backsliding, one of the notable arguments is that backsliding occurs where democratically elected leaders use constitutional, legal, and democratic processes to truncate democracy. So, you see it first with the Electoral Act. Up until 2 days ago, they are still amending the Electoral Act to target some individuals. So what we have seen today, I see now, is an unusual. We've seen corrupt leaders, we've seen authoritarian overreach, where maybe under President Obasanjo, when people talk about, when you make a call, you try and seduce some political leaders to join your party. Or even try to, worst case, use the EFCC to go after corrupt, quote-unquote, leaders in a way to create for them a cost-benefit analysis that is better for them to perhaps join you and get this. So we've seen that maybe occasionally, but we've not seen where there seems to be an epidemic of disrupting political parties, disruption. People may explain it that way as a sudden, summer of madness, meaning suddenly all Nigerian politicians lack the capacity to come together, set up a party, get elected officers, and go move on. So the question is, how did it come that today no party leader has the capacity to manage his party, apart from the ruling party? So when I hear some journalists say, oh, is there evidence that the APC or Tinubu's government is undermining? The question then is, how did we suddenly lose the capacity to just have a party? We had leaders, we had desperation in the past, but we had political parties who were not sabotaged. So what we're having today is actually that somehow it's easy to pay one or two people or to encourage them to say, as I'm sitting here now, I can go to court today and file that I'm the chairman of, I should be the chairman of ADC or APC or any party. And then if I'm empowered enough, a judge will grant a stay for now and maybe say status quo ante. And then I will rush to the media house, come to the News Central or any other media house, and then interview me. I said, I'm the faction. The next day it becomes factional leader. So it becomes a self-fulfilling. Yeah.
Mr. Sam, I think you've described it very, very nicely. Because I mean, I was giving a different iteration to that story. Once again, we're seeing the Supreme Court play a role that is becoming more and more predominant when it comes to party leadership. It's no longer becoming about constitution of the parties. Instead, it's the court that's saying, okay, this is happening here, this is happening there. Okay, this is who the leader is. We had this conversation, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of weeks ago. I had described this as, whether you like it or not, a party is a house. And in this case, regarding the ADC, it is, we own this house versus we want to rearrange the furniture inside of this house. That's exactly what's going on. And if the court says, good, or let's take the Federal Housing Authority, for instance, and says, okay, you both are supposed to be custodians of this house, but you know what? Go ahead and arrange the furniture. He who owns the house can still lock the door and no furniture comes in or out. So that's my question now regarding these court rulings. When you make a ruling, you're not really settling the issue because you're still leaving the party, subjecting it to internal wrangling, sabotage, and much more. So what hope exactly for political parties in Nigeria, even the new one, the ADC?
No, so the problem then is that the Supreme Court is failing in two ways. The judiciary, one, if you read the judgments, you know, there's what you call in jurisprudence incompletely theorized decisions, meaning A is A, B is C. You don't explain why. So when the Supreme Court says, keep off internal party affairs, the Supreme Court does not lay for you what you call intelligible criteria. If it was a U.S. Supreme Court, they would not say, one, the reason why you should allow courts should not determine political internal affairs is because blah, blah, blah. So they set out a theory for you. Then they will now say that for you. What constitutes internal affair? And in what circumstance does it trigger judicial deference to internal workers? The Supreme Court leaves you with no guide. The Supreme Court says in the labor case, internal affair. Then in PDP case, it takes jurisdiction, exercise, and says you need to obey the court. Then in ADC case, the Supreme Court says, well, court appeal, you shouldn't have made an order when you have no jurisdiction to attend the matter. It's useless, needless, but you guys go back. So in all of these cases, the Supreme Court does not clearly, coherently, and intelligently set out parameters so that a High Court judge sitting in Abeokuta or in Sokoto, when a Samamade rushes to his court with an order to stop maybe David Mark or APC chairman from going ahead with an action, would say, based on the Supreme Court decision, the Supreme Court have laid 3-4 criteria that should tell us when to defer to internal party and not exercise jurisdiction. 1, when A, B, C. 2, when this. That is how a court of policy sets out criteria to determine precedent. So the Supreme Court leaves us a confused, staccato of opinion. Internal party matters, then they take back one, they don't take another. So there's nothing principled, determinative. And so this sows into the confusion. And then the party managers, INEC itself is totally clueless, because I've argued since 2019 that INEC is a regulator. INEC should have developed internal rules based on the laws of this country, based on judicial norms, to say this is our checklist for knowing when to act. So that it's not when somebody rushes to court and obtains what seems like an order, and INEC says court order. What's court order? If you look at their website, it's listed by court order. If a court has said that A is B and is authoritative, it's listed. You are obeying. It doesn't say by court order. It doesn't make so. INEC is a totally disorganized, inefficient obviously very corrupt institution. So the combination of a very incoherent and unprincipled judiciary with a very disorganized, uninformed, INEC does not understand regulation. If I was INEC chairman, I would make determination, what we call agency adjudicatory determination as to who is the chairman of, and I'll make it through due process. Then you can only revert it by a court. A court will now look at my determination and says the INEC chairman, after considering all this, decides that INEC recognizes Mr. ABC. Then, if you don't like it, you go to court. Then the court will now review INEC's process, application of law. INEC is a quasi-judicial institution. INEC decides like a court, although it's not a court. It takes evidence. It takes submission. It looks at what people have provided for it and makes a determination on fact. So both the INEC and the judiciary have brought us into this crisis. It's not a crisis caused by bad political managers or David Mark doesn't know how to manage ADC.
Dr. Sam
doesn't know how to manage Labour Party. Kabiru doesn't know how to manage PDP. How come
Dr. Sam,
our leaders can't manage a party?
With the dynamic you just placed on the table, now that removes the independence out of the INEC, the Independence National Electoral Commission, because now you're subjecting it itself to a court as well.
Every institution in this country is independent. For example, the INEC is independent because INEC, one, the Constitution says INEC rules are not subject to legislative and executive overrule. So it's independent. But every institution under the Constitution, the judicial supremacy means that the court exists to now make sure that you exercise their power independently. For example, the central bank is independent. It sits and makes monetary policy. The president of Nigeria cannot declare from Aso the monetary policy of this country. Every month, the MPR is issued by the central bank. It doesn't matter whether the consult the president. It's an independent judicial agency.
Okay, Dr. Sam.
So INEC independence, that INEC is not going to listen to anybody. INEC is not going to be teleguided. But everything it does is subject to judicial review. That's why you have a court.
All right,
that's
then.
So, Mr. Madi, we agree that we have a lot of heavyweights in the ADC, but of course they're still building their national relevance. Now, in a situation like this, where the court is getting involved in internal issue, how much of an influence can they get ahead of the 2027 elections?
Well, you're right. They have many heavyweights, and the reason why courts should not get involved is that these heavyweights should decide their affairs in line with their own rules. Now, let's get this clear. Courts have a right to, for example, if Deeper Life or Redeemed Church or any church in this country has a dispute as to who is the general overseer, the court does not tell you who is the general overseer. But if your constitution says when A dies, B succeeds, the court will intervene, and they have done so. So judicial interference is not that the court will be the one who will tell you who is what. The court is only going to be there to make sure you follow your rules. So the court defers, settle your matter. But again, these heavyweights have to play by their own rules. That's number one. Number two, politics is a game of intrigues, strategies, and conspiracies. Like Chukwukadebo would define, he said is the conspiracy, the last conspiracy to win is the one that politically wins politically. The court shouldn't bother about when politicians conspire, strategize, plan, and execute their plan, and somebody wins. That's not a court's business. Even that person did not win ethically, as long as they follow their rules. So a court's job is to not be involved in what the parties are doing, but to wait and ask itself, if somebody brings a complaint, is there a serious violation of the Constitution or the party's Constitution or the national Constitution? If there's not, the court will say, dismiss the matter. You see, the problem with the Nigerian judiciary is that they assume that every matter that goes to court must be given full hearing. That's not true. The judges have the discretion to say, I don't see a triable issue here. And then, you know what? There's no issue here. Go and settle to your court. Secondly, the judges themselves should know that they look at the environment and say, look, a party is going to have a convention tomorrow, and you're asking me to issue injunction against them. In the US, elsewhere, judges say, no, we can't do that. You know what? Let them complete what they're doing. Then we can sit back. If it is null and void, we can go back and nullify it. So judges need to restrain themselves, show that they understand that their work is different from politics, and refuse politicians forcing them to enter to the fray. Then the big politicians themselves should now look at their rules and know that, look, you can win in politics with their bozo power. Yeah, but you should win according to their own rules.
Dr. Mahdi, we're almost at the end of the show today. My final question to you would be the fact that ADC used to be a rallying point. Well, by extension, considering that it's one of its principles, was a principle in one of the parties from 2023 that a lot of youth were following. And they have these internal issues and disputes currently. I'm wondering what the party leadership, the restored party leadership, need to do now to be able to restore that confidence. If you can be summary in that submission.
So I think that they missed the opportunity. They should be more open, apparent. The biggest challenge is not the man Gombe. It's now the reported exit of two major guys probably in a couple of days. If that's true, I think it's an error. They should have brought them together and transparently made a decision as to who will be their flag bearer. They wasted time, they allowed for too much intrigues, and today ADC is probably going to enter into a very difficult and bad crisis, inevitably. They should have acted earlier. They could still act now and bring people together in a couple of days and say, you know what, we want to be transparent. We want to look at the national poll that tells us who is the most popular of these big weights, who should be our candidate. The leadership were too transactional, and they didn't come out. They took for granted the support of Nigerians, and I hope it doesn't hurt them down the line.
All right, then. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you so much. Mazino is...
I enjoyed that. I totally did.
Thank you, Mrs. Everybody, for always joining us and having this conversation on clarity. And of course, now that the Supreme Court is involved, we wait to see what happens next and if truly they'll be able to fix their home. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Grand. And that would be our final conversation for today inside of Breakfast Extra, unless the producers shout something else in my ear. But then again, it's been a grand one. And of course, we are definitely going to be... The producers just made a joke. No, Raji, you don't tell jokes here. In any case, it's been a grand one from your monologue in the morning, from the policing issue to what we have here regarding the disputes inside of the APC, first of all, and then the ADC. There's nothing remaining except the PDP and the ADC. I beg your pardon. Thank you. There's nothing remaining now except the APC, and that does not seem very democratic. If there are no choices, then what am I going to the market to go and buy with my excess money?
Wow.
It's unfortunate where we find ourselves, especially this close to the elections, but we continue to bring you the news. We have no say. We just need to clarify on it, not cancel anything. And you make up your mind as we approach those election dates. From us here for Breakfast Extra, what else do you want to tell before we say goodbye?
Well, have a lovely Saturday and make sure you know what your rights are and you fight for it.
I'll be bringing you the 12 o'clock bulletin, so do stay tuned. We'll be back again tomorrow, 8 o'clock. Join us then for a Sunday edition of Breakfast Extra.
Tomorrow.
Bye-bye.